Hi,
Hi, how are you?
good. How are you? Judith Rossell has been an illustrator and writer of children's books for nearly 20 years. Before that, she worked as a government scientist and also for a cotton spinning company. She has written 15 books and illustrated more than 80. Her books have been published in the UK, the USA, and have been translated into more than 20 languages. She lives in Melbourne, Australia. Hi, welcome to Studimation.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's
Thank
nice to
you
meet
so
you.
much for joining in today. Are you ready for the interview?
Bring them on. Bring the questions on.
Yeah. Why did you choose to write for children?
I started working as an illustrator. So I started illustrating books for children, and then I began to write the words because I had ideas for stories. When you illustrate other people's stories, it often gives you ideas for your own stories. So
Yes,
that's how I started.
that's right. You work as a scientist with the government. How was the transition from being a scientist to an author?
It's very different because when I was a scientist, I worked in a lab. I went to work. And as an author, I work from home and I just think stories up. It's very different, but it's not as different as all that because, of course, a scientist is a creative job as well. When you're a scientist, you have to think in a creative way. So it's different, but not as different as you might think.
How did the transition feel like?
I'm much happier being an illustrator than being a scientist. It suits me better. But I also had a good time working in science. I enjoyed that as well. I think it's good to do different things, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Did you specifically aim to write for the young readers or are you comfortable with it?
Um, I think because I started as an illustrator and I worked in children's books, I'm interested in writing for children. When I was young myself, I loved to read a lot. And so I think it's great to be able to produce the kind of books I would have loved when I was little. I think that's why I'm interested in it. I'm not very interested in writing for adults, so maybe one day.
Yeah. What was your favorite book as a child?
Oh, I was really obsessed with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Do you
Yeah.
know that book?
Yes.
Yeah, I loved that book. When I
I
was
like it
little,
too.
I would write stories at school, and in the stories, I just went to sleep and I witnessed a scene from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then I woke up. I wasn't a very creative thinker as a kid. I just wanted to be in that story, I think. So,
How has the world changed now as compared to when you were a kid?
well, I think the big difference is that I can talk to someone on the other side of the world on the computer. When I was little, computers were still very, very new.
Yeah.
My father was also a scientist, and when he wanted to get a computer to do a hard maths problem for him, he had to print out cards and make holes in them and then stack them in boxes and drive them all the way to Canberra, where there was a big, clever computer to do a one sum. And if one card was in the wrong place, then the program didn't work. Nowadays, I'm sure he would be able to do that probably on his phone even. So
Yeah.
the big difference is communication, and computers, I think, has changed the world since I was little.
Yes. Has it any way impacted your writing process?
Um, I bought my first laptop. I always said I'd buy my first computer when I sold the first thing I wrote. And up to then, I used my friend's a laptop, which he was throwing out, and it only just worked. I had to prop it up with some books, and every time it moved, it would turn itself off.
Yeah.
So nowadays, yes, I use the computer all the time, of course, and also for drawing on the iPad.
Yes.
So yeah, it's made a big difference in a way.
Mhm. Tell us about your latest book you are working on and who is your target audience this time around?
I'm writing a book for girls and boys, but it's mainly for girls because all the characters are girls. And I hope boys will read it though. It's set in the 1920s and it's for girls between about 9 and 12 readers. And it's an adventure story. At the moment, I've finished writing the words and I'm now drawing all the pictures.
Yeah.
But it won't be
You've
coming
written,
out till next year. So it's a long way off still.
you've written many illustrating puzzle and maze books. Seems like you're interested in child psychology and early child development. Did you opt for becoming a teacher at any point in your life?
No, not really. Maybe when I was little at school, I maybe thought it would be a good idea because I think when you're a kid and you're in class, you think it might be fun to be in charge of the class. But no, nowadays I teach adults a little bit, but I don't think I'd be a very good teacher. I don't think I'd be quite patient enough. Teachers have to be very patient. Would you like to be a teacher yourself?
No.
Are you doing education
Yeah.
videos and things?
I
You
like
don't
to
think-
take it as a business.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. What was your favorite subject at school?
That's such a good question. I did like, what did I like? At our school, we did quite a lot of sort of craft subjects like sewing and pottery, and I usually quite enjoyed the practical things like that. Although having said that, our sewing teacher was very mean. So that didn't help. I quite liked English. I always found chemistry easy. So that's probably why I ended up doing science, because for me, chemistry always felt easy. Yeah, I didn't have one subject I really loved. What's your favorite subject at school?
English.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. Thank you. Your artwork is very psychedelic and mesmerizing. Do you illustrate your own books?
Yes, I illustrate my own books and I illustrate other people's books as well sometimes. I do both.
How did you get the inspiration to illustrate such books?
I just like drawing pictures, actually. I was the kid at school who was always drawing in class, and the teachers are always saying, stop drawing to me. So yeah, I do enjoy drawing, and I think when I think up ideas, they're usually visual ideas. So I usually think when I think of something new, it's usually an image that I think of. And so often, even with writing, I start with an image or a scene. So I do enjoy drawing a lot.
Have you tried digital art?
Yes, I do. These days, I do a lot of work on the iPad. I use the program Procreate. Do you know Procreate? And the last few books I illustrated, I used Procreate to illustrate them. And it's been very easy for me to learn. It feels very straightforward. And
That's really cool. What is the book Garden of Lilies about?
oh, Garden of Lilies. It's actually just here. Look, it's this one here. I'll grab it. Garden of Lilies. What happened was I wrote a trilogy of books about a little girl in Victorian times called, the first one's Withering by Sea, and then I should know my own book, shouldn't I? Withering by Sea, Wormwood Mire, Wakestone Hall are the three books. This is them there. And in the second book, my character Stella has these three terribly mean aunties, and they give her this really terrible book to read. And it's full of stories. It's very Victorian, and the Victorians used to do this thing with children where they'd write a story and where the kids do the wrong thing and then terrible things happen to them as a punishment. You know those sort of stories? Yeah. And in the book, Stella is reading a book like this and she finds it very discouraging in her life because, the child takes one step wrong and then unfortunately dies, basically. And we thought it'd be fun to produce the book. So it's the book from the book. So in the book, Stella is reading this book and then we made it. So it's made to look like an actual Victorian book. It's got these sort of beautiful marbling end papers. I made these. And then it's just stories where little children do the wrong thing, very short stories where they do the wrong thing and then die. And they all have little bits of advice in rhyme at the end, like greedy children always tend to meet with a disastrous end. And then in between the stories are little bits of advice for life about living in Victorian times. It's meant to be funny, but it's a very dark kind of humor, I think. I think if you just read this without reading the other books, it might be a little bit confusing because it just feels a bit dark, really.
It's a very beautiful theme.
Thank you. Yes, I was very happy with how it looks, actually. It's very hard to get hold of now. People often contact me and ask if they can find a copy, but the publisher's just made one print run because obviously it's a little gift book to do with another book. So it's a bit obscure, and it's a little bit hard to find copies now. I have a few.
Love the black and gold theme.
Beg your pardon?
I love the black and gold color theme.
I think so too. I was so lucky. They made one bunch of them with these beautiful sort of pretend fake leather covers as well, and they looked so nice. You know, they just really look like old books. I was so happy with them. Oh, and they have a ribbon as well. I don't know if you can see, but they published them and they have this beautiful ribbon as well here.
Wow.
So you can mark your page. It's very old-fashioned. Isn't that gorgeous?
Yes.
So nice.
Yeah. It matches with the theme perfectly.
Yes, I really wanted it to look just like a Victorian book, and it's got a pretend author. It's meant to be written by this lady, Prudence A. Goodchild, who doesn't exist. And I did a drawing of her at the back and made a biography for her, but she's an invented person. She's basically me, but nasty.
What advice would you like to give to young readers?
Young readers?
Yeah.
Just keep reading. Read lots of different things too. I mean, I think sometimes we get caught up on one particular genre that we love, and that's obviously great, but make sure you mix it up with some other things too, because you might be missing out on something else you might love. I remember years ago, my sister told me to read these books. I don't know, you might not have heard of them. They're Master and Commander stories, and they're about sailors in the Napoleonic Wars in ships. And I thought, there is no way that is something I would like to read. I couldn't imagine wanting to read them. And they're some of my favorite books because they're so well written. So I think it's sometimes great to just read outside what you would normally read as well, just to make sure you're not missing out on something else you might love.
What genres do you mostly read?
I enjoy reading sort of crime thrillers, you know, like detective stories. I enjoy a lot. I read quite a lot of middle grade children's books because that's what I write. And I read a lot of history books as well. I enjoy history.
That's really cool.
Lots of things.
Yeah. What advice would you give to other authors?
Other authors?
Yeah.
You know, I don't. If they're other authors, I guess I would tell them, yay, keep going. I mean, if they're people who are starting out in writing, I would say just keep trying. I actually teach adults who want to write for children, and in my classes, I often have people who are really good writers and people who have brilliant ideas. But the ones who succeed are the ones who don't give up.
Yeah.
So they could be brilliant, but if they don't finish their book, it doesn't, you know, they will never manage to get the book published because step one is finish your work. So I would say to people, the best thing is to be determined and don't give up. And for younger writers as well, try and write every day, keep writing and keep practicing. The more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah. What's the hardest part of being an author?
I actually find writing really difficult. I like drawing very much, but I find writing quite hard, and I have trouble motivating myself. For me, the hardest bit is sitting down and doing it. I can spend all morning not working, and I think I should do some work before lunch. You know, I should do 2 hours of work, and then time goes past. I think I'll do 1 hour of work, and then time goes on. I think I'll do half an hour. And then you think, well, there's no point in starting before lunch. So after lunch, that's what I do all day. I'd like to be a bit more organized and a little bit more motivated. Yeah.
What keeps you motivated in writing books?
I do want to do it. I have to keep reminding myself I chose to do this. It's not like someone's making me. Yeah. I do want to do it. And once I've done it, I usually feel very good. It's just there's something about starting every day that I do struggle a little bit with. But once I'm going, I'm usually okay. So I think I just have to try a bit harder to, get on with it, really.
Yeah. Did any of your childhood memories contribute to any of your books?
Um, Perhaps a little bit. I think what I can remember is what I liked reading about as a child. I think I can remember that. So I try and put that sort of feeling into the books I write. I sometimes think it'd be fun to write a family story. I there are 4 children in my family when I was growing up. And so I think it would be interesting to write a story with a family with a lot of children in it. And if I did that, I would definitely be thinking back to when I was young. But I think when I was young, I read more to escape. Not that there was anything terrible in my life, but just I wanted adventures and excitement. And I think I tend to write those sort of stories as well, rather than real life stories. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What's the feeling like of carrying your book when it's first published?
Oh, it's so nice. It's really nice. When you see it in a shop, for example, and you go into a shop and you see a big pile of your book. Once when I was in America, I was visiting New York, and I went into the New York's public library, which is a very grand building, and I found my book on the shelf in the library. That was so cool. To think of my book, I come from Australia, it's a long way away, to see my book sitting on a shelf in the New York Public Library just felt amazing to me. It's very nice. And I think the other thing I really love is when the book is translated into lots of different languages, and you can think of children in lots of different countries reading a book that you wrote. It's fabulous. It feels such a privilege.
Yeah. Before we end our interview, please share where we can find your books.
Oh, if you're in America, are you in America?
Yeah.
You could find them on Amazon, definitely. The first 2 books in the Stella series are available in America. And my most recent book, actually, let me see if I can find it. It should be here. This isn't really very organized, is it? Yeah, this one. I feel like I'm sort of reaching behind me. It would be organized if I had these things in a pile in front of me, wouldn't it? It's this one. So this is a book I did during lockdown. It has to come out of the shelf. This one. This is an American book. This is published in America, and it's for very little children. And it's like a dinner plate. I'll show you how it works. I'm really happy with this book. So here's a dinner plate. Can you see what I mean? Here.
Yeah.
And the children can just put different food on the plate by turning the flaps.
Wow.
They can make different dinners. Oh, there's only a pea there. There's some celery. Isn't that cool? This one's available in America. This is actually an American book. It's called Play with Your Plate.
Is your books available in Barnes and Noble?
I think so, yes.
And what about your website?
It's www.judithrossell, JudithRossell.com.
Awesome.
It's like Russell except with an O instead of a U.
With this, we end our chat. Thank you so much for joining in. It was fun talking to you.
Thank you. It was so nice to meet you, and good luck for all your interviews for Book Week.
Thank you so much.